Thank you all very, very much. I'm very grateful. Cliff and I are both grateful that you are here tonight. We are delighted to have a chance to share a few ideas with you and to ask you to talk to all your friends and neighbors. You know, in the next few hours, I hope that you will Facebook, tweet, email, call, and to show I'm old-fashioned, actually even visit face-to-face. And remind people that tomorrow night really matters a lot. I have a couple of simple questions that I want to ask you that I think will help explain this race and will help explain why Callista and I made the decision after about a year of talking about it that we would run and live through this whole process. How many of you believe that Washington and the country are substantially in the wrong direction? Okay. How many of you believe that while we need to defeat Obama, in fact, the changes we need go much deeper and involve many more things, the bureaucracy, the judges, the laws, far more than just changing the president? How many of you think that even if we win a decisive election, that the forces of the old order will fight us every single day to try to stop us? One last question, is it took me a while to sort this out and try to figure this out, so I'm going to share with you something I've been thinking about for the last 3 or 4 days to try to explain why this election is so different. How many of you believe that the level of change we need is really big? And now, the thing which finally crystallized this for me, and you can see this if you go to newt.org, our campaign site, is an interview with George Soros, the very liberal billionaire. See, I knew a few of you would remember George. He's left such fond memories. And Soros was at Davos at the World Economic Forum where all the big guys get together. And he did an interview with Reuters, which is on videotape, which is what we have at newt.org. And he said, you know, we actually don't care between Romney and Obama because, well, the personalities would be a little different. They'd be about the same policies. And I watched this 3 or 4 times and tried to understand it, and then we found a little piece out of Fox News where they showed all of these Wall Street types who had been for Obama, and they have this great graphic where they all go over here and now they're all for Romney. And they're all the same people. I mean, Goldman Sachs, #1 fundraiser for Obama, Goldman Sachs, #1 fundraiser for Romney. And so I began thinking about it, and it made me realize that the real underlying question in this campaign is whether we want an election that involves real change on a large scale, or whether we want an election that has small differences fighting over who's going to manage the decay. Because the truth is, and this is, I think, the thing that is very hard for the Republican establishment to understand, you cannot stop the decay without very serious, difficult political conflict in Washington. It is not possible. Let me give you a sense of the scale we're talking about. I've been very intrigued with a group called Strong America Now who want to apply modern management to government. And they believe they can save at least $500 billion a year by applying modern management, and that the effect on the economy might be as much as a $2 trillion increase. Now, to give you a sense of how big the difference is, I described the world that works largely but not completely the private sector, and the world that fails, largely but not completely government. And I really liked Clint Eastwood's halftime commercial, where he talked about America being at halftime. And I think it's exactly right. I mean, the Imperial Germany was going to pass us, and that failed. The Nazis were going to beat us, and that failed. The Soviets were going to beat us, and that failed. The Japanese were going to become #1, and then they went into a 30-year recession. If we get our act together, we're going to have a terrific third century as the leading country in the world. It's just that simple. But to get our act together involves very dramatic changes. Now let me give you an example. How many of you have ever gone online to track a package at UPS or FedEx? Raise your hand. Okay, so I want to make a point here. Raise your hand again. I want you to look around the room. Okay. This is the point I'm trying to get across to my friends in the news media. This is not a theory. This is a fact. Only in Washington does this seem strange. We have technologies which allow us, between UPS and FedEx, 25 million packages a day. And you can track them in virtually real time, so you know where they are, at no extra cost. That's the world that works. Now over here you have the federal government, which cannot currently find 11 million illegal immigrants if they're sitting still. So one of my proposals on illegal immigration has been that we send a package to everyone who's here illegally. When they get delivered, we pull it up in the computer. We know where they all are. And it's at no extra cost. Now, let me just say for the fact checkers, that was hyperbole. That was not a serious proposal. But that's the scale of change we're talking about. I've been attacked. In fact, Saturday Night Live made fun of me for suggesting that it would be good for us to go to the moon. And it was very interesting because Greta Van Susteren interviewed me 2 days later, and she said, you know, it's fascinating. I was on the Space Coast, which is a major center of employment. I was talking to people who work at Cape Canaveral. And she said, you know, there's something that's gone wrong with the elite psyche in this country. That the very people who would have applauded John F. Kennedy in 1961 now deal with the same ideas as though they're ridicule. And I was thinking about it because Callista and I had done a movie, City Upon a Hill, in which we have Kennedy's speech, May 1961, saying, we will put a man on the moon within this decade. And then we have an astronaut, one of the people who landed on the moon, and he says, you know, when Kennedy said that, no American had ever orbited the Earth. One American had gone up suborbital for 3 hours. The only person to orbit at that point was Yuri Gagarin, a Russian. We didn't have the rockets, we didn't have the organization, we didn't have the technology, we didn't have the trained astronauts. And how many of you remember July 1969? Okay? How many of you were proud to be an American when they landed on the moon? Think about how many young people went into science and engineering and math because there was an exciting future, doing exciting things. And people don't get it today. So one of my opponents is running this commercial. It says, Gingrich wants to spend $500 billion or something. I never mentioned a number. What I said was we needed a whole new approach. In the 1920s and 30s, we developed aircraft and we developed an airlines industry. The federal government did not run the airline and didn't build the airplanes. You could take the current NASA budget, no additional money, redesign how you spend it, and you would liberate billions and billions of dollars of private sector investment. And you would have new people doing new things in new ways, and it would be exciting again, and engineering schools would flourish, and aerospace design schools would flourish. And all of you who are using modern technology, if you have an iPhone or a BlackBerry, you have a device coming out of the micro-miniaturization necessary to go into space. If you go through our society and you look at every single thing that came out of the space program, it's what made us the dominant technological society the last 40 years. So I'm just giving this as an example because I think we need bold solutions across the board. I think we need the courage to go back out and even risk having Saturday Night Live make fun of us.
That's right.
And frankly, I'm going to double down on my bet. Someday I want to see Saturday Night Live broadcast from the moon.
There you go.
But I'm making a point that has nothing to do with going to the moon, although there's a very important national security implication. The Chinese, the Indians, and the Russians are all investing in space, and given the incompetence and the bureaucracy and the red tape of NASA, we are today unable to project that we're going to keep up with them because we are so bad at doing these things because we bureaucratized them all. They're all surrounded now by red tape. So it was a serious proposal actually given as a speech, which you can see at newt.org. It was carried by C-SPAN, and it's a serious proposal which was made to some 500 serious science engineers who had a real interest in this. But now let me come back closer to home. We need a very bold change in our tax program aimed at creating jobs. And this is a fundamental difference between Governor Romney and me. He basically has very timid proposals. The Wall Street Journal said I had the most aggressive job-creating proposal and that his was so timid that it could be Obama's, which I thought was almost an insult. But here's what I would do, just to show you how you jumpstart creating jobs. One, we would have zero capital gains tax so that hundreds of billions of dollars would pour into the U.S. because we'd be the best place to invest in the world, and the number of new businesses would be amazing. Two, we would reduce the capital gains tax to 12.5%, which is the Irish rate. That would make it better even than the Canadian tax rate. At 12.5%, $700 billion of tied-up profit would come home from overseas. Our companies could compete anywhere in the world effectively. And I say to my liberal friends, General Electric would actually pay taxes at that rate.
All right.
We'd go to 100% expensing. This means whether you're a farmer, a small business, a factory, a doctor, any new equipment you buy you can write off in 1 year. And the purpose is simple. I want to have the best, most modern equipment in the world in order to be in a position that our workers are the most productive and therefore can compete with China and India and win the competition. Now, if you're going to modernize the equipment, you need to help modernize the workforce. So our proposal is that all future unemployment compensation be attached to signing up for a business-led training program so that while we're helping you during the period when you're unemployed, you're helping yourself and your country by learning something. We should never again pay somebody 99 weeks to do nothing. It's fundamentally wrong. 99 weeks is long enough to get an associate degree. I mean, think about how many million people under the Obama model have been paid to do nothing, to waste their life for 99 weeks. It's a profound failure. In addition, on taxes, we would abolish the death tax permanently because we believe that it is very, very important that people who work hard are allowed to keep what they earn. And let me say for individuals, there's a lot of talk about Governor Romney only paying 15%. If I were a liberal, I would tell you that's unfair and we should raise it. But I'm a conservative. So I'm going to tell you it's unfair and we should lower your tax. Our proposal is based on a model that has worked in Hong Kong. We propose that you have an option. You can keep the current tax code, your current deductions, your current paperwork, or you can have a one-page tax form. This is how much I earned. This is the number of dependents I have. Here's 15%. Now, Let me be clear. This will not be revenue neutral. The establishment in Washington will throw themselves on the floor. The New York Times will editorialize ferociously. I have no intention of being revenue neutral. My goal is to shrink the government to fit the revenues, not to raise the revenues. There is a major difference between the old line establishment Republicans and the pro-growth, pro-jobs, Ronald Reagan, Jack Kemp, Newt Gingrich wing of this party. I will not be the tax collector for Barack Obama's credit card. And by the way, when I left the speakership, we'd helped create 11 million new jobs with Bill Clinton in 4 years. Earlier, working with Ronald Reagan, we'd helped create 16 million jobs in the Reagan administration. My goal is to get back to 4.2% unemployment with full participation in the economy, and at that rate, you'll have so many more people working, so many fewer people on food stamps, that we're going to have lots of new additional federal revenue. So I'm not worried about generating revenue. I'm worried about creating jobs to put people back to work, because America only works when Americans are working. Let me take just 1 second to expand on this. Governor Romney said this week something he actually didn't quite mean to say, but he did say it, except he didn't want to say it. But then after he said it, he explained that it wasn't really what he meant to say, because it turns out that not only does he not like firing people, but he actually loves the poor and wishes he'd said how much he loved the poor, except he didn't say that. What he said was, to be clear, he wasn't going to, and he repeated this, by the way, when he explained himself. He wasn't going to worry about the very poor because they have a safety net. I believe that is exactly wrong, and let me explain why. The safety net in its modern form is a spider web. It traps you in dependency. It traps you without skills. It traps you without habits. It traps you without networking that allows you to get jobs. I want to replace the safety net with a springboard that allows the poor to rise, to have a job, to buy a home, to pursue happiness, to be complete Americans, which means pursuing happiness, not sitting over here waiting for somebody to give them a check. If you help me tomorrow night, and if you help me all day tomorrow talking to all your friends so that they help me tomorrow night, as your nominee, I intend to run a campaign in which we're going to pit the desire to be the best paycheck president in American history against the best food stamp president in American history. It is an objective fact that Barack Obama is the most successful food stamp president we've ever had. His policies have put more people in dependency on the government than anyone in history. I would like to be the most successful job-creating president focused on creating opportunities for every American of every background, which is why we want to replace the safety net with a springboard so that everybody has an opportunity to pursue happiness and to truly participate in the American concept. Now, as part of this economic growth program, we have to develop a program which focuses intensely on creating an American energy production. The fact is, if you watch around the world, look what's happening in the Middle East right now. You have an Obama administration which is appeasing the elements that hate us and lying about who they are and refusing to face reality. In Egypt, you now have Americans being held hostage. This is intolerable. This resembles Jimmy Carter and the Iranian hostage crisis. I sat at the Capitol when Ronald Reagan was sworn in. And literally, as he was giving his inaugural address, word spread among us that the Iranian hostages had left, the American hostages had left Iranian airspace, timed by the Iranians to occur immediately after Jimmy Carter ceased to be president. And the reason was twofold. One was that they despised Carter's weakness. and the other was they feared Reagan's strength. If I were president, the message to the Egyptian government this evening would be quiet, firm, unequivocal, and I suspect by sometime tomorrow morning, all of the hostages would be on an airplane coming back home. The idea that we give $1.3 billion a year to a government which arrests our citizens, a government which is showing no respect for us, the idea that their military equipment, which depends on our supplies to be competent, is going to last more than a year without our help. The idea that, remember, they've now had an election. This is what Obama thought of as the Arab Spring. The largest winning bloc are the Muslim Brotherhood. They're the moderates. The second largest bloc is more radical than the Brotherhood. This is madness. You turn to Pakistan, which we've given $20 billion to, and you find that they have arrested the doctor who helped us find bin Laden. They didn't give him an award. They didn't say, this is great, you helped find the most wanted terrorist on the planet, who happened to be in a military city in a large building 1 mile from the National Defense University. Instead, they're mad at the doctor for helping the Americans. Well, you know, I think we ought to be furious at the Pakistanis for hiding bin Laden for 7 years. But there's a serious way to send a signal to the Middle East. We need an American program of developing oil production and gasoline production on such a scale. You look at North Dakota. North Dakota right now has 3.5% unemployment. They've had 7 straight tax cuts at the state level. Why? Because by pure accident, the Bakken Formation's on private land. If it had been on government land, we would have discovered that western North Dakota is sacred territory, which was once home to the buffalo, and that at least 11 environmental groups would have filed a lawsuit to protect anybody from going into federal property to ruin it on behalf of energy. That's a fact. And that's where we are today. I have a very simple goal. I want us to produce so much energy that no American president ever again bows to a Saudi king, period. Now, how do you do that? Well, I think one of the advantages I bring to this race is I've actually been there and done that. I worked with Ronald Reagan for 8 years, actually longer than that if you count the campaign. And then as Speaker of the House, I worked for 4 years. I have a pretty good notion of how Washington works. So when we campaign, with your help, if I become the Republican nominee, the first thing we'll do, although I'll be the Republican nominee, is we will run an American campaign. We will seek every American. And what we're going to say is simple. Whoever you are, whatever neighborhood, whatever your...
discrimination against gays and lesbians all the time.
All right, let's be fair. My guess is, looking at the total crowd here, it's about 400, so my guess is it's 407 to 3. But they're making my point. Look, here are 3 big dividing points. I want to create paychecks. Obama's content with food stamps. Everybody in America who'd like their children and their grandchildren to earn a paycheck and be independent, we want you to join us as Americans in developing an American campaign. I believe the Declaration of Independence, stating that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, is the base of America. President Obama seems to think that Saul Alinsky and his radicalism is a better idea. If you agree with us that the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Federalist Papers are a better base than Saul Alinsky, we want you to join our campaign. I believe the world is dangerous, and we need to have strategies which enable us to be so strong, so prosperous, with such a powerful economy that no one can seriously threaten us. The President believes we can be weak, we can be underdefended, we can appease our enemies, and things will work out. Everybody who thinks it's better to be strong enough to be safe, we want you to join us. Now that's an American campaign. This is a campaign of very big choices. And I think that's a key thing to understand about this election. This may be the most important election of our lifetime. And I think it's very, very important that we recognize that beating Barack Obama is essential, because if he gets reelected with this economy and this deficit and these policies, you can't imagine how radical his second term would be. And so I think it's very important that we face this fall. And there's a very simple question Republicans have to ask yourselves. When we nominate moderates, they lose. 1996, we nominated a moderate. He lost badly. 2008, we nominated a moderate. He lost badly. And the fact is, when you look at his record as governor, not the commercials, but the record, Governor Romney was functionally pro-abortion, pro-gun control, and pro-tax increase. In terms of job creation, 48,000 fewer manufacturing jobs at the end of his term than when he began. The fact is, between his tax increases and Romney Care, he had the third worst record of any governor in the country in job creation. Pitting that against Obama, I think, is very dubious. I don't know, frankly, and it's your governor who said it, I don't know how you take Obamacare and have the debate, because I think they're so similar that it would be very hard for them. On the other hand, you can take patient power, returning decisions back home, letting you and your doctor make the decision with no Washington bureaucrat, and you can compare that to Obamacare. Now you have a real debate. That's the difference. But there's one other difference. And I do want all of you to think about this long and hard and talk to your friends and neighbors. I believe we have to elect someone who is prepared to tell the American people the truth, who is prepared to lay out things that can be done, and who's prepared to build a team that'll do it. I helped in 1980 put together the first Capitol Steps event with Governor Reagan, and all of us came together. I helped in 1994 with 350 candidates in the Contract with America, the largest one-party increase in American history, 9 million additional votes over 1990. If you help me win the nomination, I will do everything I can to get a team to run this fall. We're going to promise a couple big things. First, that if you elect us, that the House and Senate will stay in session on January 3rd. And before I am sworn in on January 20th, they will have repealed Obamacare, they will have repealed Dodd-Frank, and they will have repealed Sarbanes-Oxley. My goal, with your help, and this only works with your help, my goal is to be in a position where on the very first day, within hours of being sworn in, we will have signed all 3 repeals and set the stage for real change and for real reform. In addition, on the very first day, we will sign a number of executive orders. You can go to newt.org and you'll see a section where you can submit your ideas. All of the executive orders will be posted by October 1st, so everybody will know if we win, this is where we're going. The very first executive order will abolish all of the White House czars as of that moment. We will also immediately move to affect energy because we will sign an executive order which will say that the Keystone Pipeline can begin being built as of that day. And we'll sign an executive order which will, in fact, enable drilling to begin once again in the Gulf of Mexico to bring down the price of gasoline by reopening. In 2008, at American Solutions, I helped launch a little project called Drill Here, Drill Now, Pay Less. And guess what? I actually think it's a good idea. And I think when you look at the highest price of gasoline in American history, an Environmental Protection Agency under Obama looking at a rule that would increase the price by 25 cents a gallon, you know we need a new and a very different direction. So I will sign permitting additional development of gas and oil capabilities. In addition, we will propose to replace the Environmental Protection Agency with a brand new Environmental Solutions Agency, the first ground rule of which is common sense. I will also propose something that directly affects a number of the companies that are right here in Minnesota, and that is that we modernize the Food and Drug Administration with a brand new model. The new model is they should be in the laboratory understanding the science, and their job should be to accelerate getting it to the patient, not to block it getting to the patient. That will create millions of new American jobs, allowing us to sell worldwide new products that we're developing today. The Food and Drug Administration is so bad that it is actually forcing companies to go overseas in order to develop the products because it is so expensive and so difficult to get it done here. That is a totally self-imposed wound on our economy, and it weakens our ability to help people and to move in the right direction. So I've tried to give you tonight a sense. We can move quickly. We can move in the right direction. We can have a big issues campaign in which we offer the American people better solutions with better outcomes. Not pain and austerity, but growth, prosperity, opportunities, developing better systems. You know, we don't think of the FedEx and UPS ability to deliver and track as a problem. We think of that as an opportunity. We don't think of going out and using an ATM card to get money as a problem. We don't think about having a microwave to fix a quick meal as a problem. When I watch these guys in Washington, they develop their latest idea, which always involves, by the way, punishing the American people. I mean, I get these reporters come in and say, okay, prove you're really tough. Who are you going to hurt? I'm not signing up to hurt people. Now, it's fair to say that if we take the American Express, Visa, and MasterCard payment systems and we apply it to Medicare and to Medicaid, we will probably save between $60 and $110 billion a year by not paying crooks. So I'm prepared to say yes. If you are a crook, you probably don't want to vote for me. But I think that our approach, conservatism using the work ethic, science and technology, free markets, we should be the people who offer a better future of greater opportunity with greater prosperity for more people. We should go out and we should be the happy movement that basically says, hi, how would you like to have a job? The president's very proud because his bill allows young people to stay on their parents' insurance until they're 26. I would like them to get a job. I'd like them to be able to get their own insurance. And on behalf of the parents of America, I'd like them to be able to afford to move out. It's a fundamentally better future than Obama can offer. So Obama's going to campaign in the Jimmy Carter tradition. Carter once did a speech in which he said, yes, we're at the end of the American dream and we're now in malaise and things are going to be miserable, but at least we can share the misery equally. And the American people looked at him and thought, no, why don't we just fire you? Ronald Reagan came along. He had a line you'll probably hear me steal later on this year. He used to say, if your brother-in-law loses his job, it's called a recession. If you lose your job, it's called a depression. If Jimmy Carter loses his job, it's called a recovery. Now, I'm not too proud to say that I may just change one name in that particular story and use it this fall, but I want you to go and tell your friends. This is, Clint Eastwood was right yesterday. We're having a discussion which is halftime. And we as a people need to have, and this is why I really would love to have a positive, idea-oriented, serious campaign without gotcha and without negatives and without all the baloney. And I'd like to be able to talk about the things we can do that are better, the things we can do that are bigger, the things we can do that create a more decent future. Because I think we can go out and we can spread the word to every American that the time has come to work together to force Washington and New York back on the right track, to make sure that every American has a better future. With your help, we will do everything we can to serve this country. And I'll close by saying to you, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, my dad served in the U.S. Army for 27 years in the infantry. I promise you that if you honor me by helping me become the nominee, and you honor me by helping me become president, that I pledge to you my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor, that together we will do this. Thank you, good luck, and God bless you.